Hello and welcome to another anime lore and theory video. I'm Shergok, your host, and today we are going to take a closer look at how, spoiler alert, Megumin had killed her former teacher, the very person that fought her explosion magic. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel and say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. Megumin was always eccentric, and she is relatively quick to use her explosion magic whenever the situation calls for it. Whenever someone questions her abilities, or just because she wants to unleash at least one explosion every single day, no matter what. This habit went so far that she attacked the seemingly abandoned castle of one of the Demon King's generals every single day with her explosion, even after the general politely asked the residents of Axel to simply stop. But Megumin continued to unleash an explosion every day regardless. So, every single day, the question arises, why did Megumin use the explosion spell to take out her teacher? And with that said, the question arises, why did Megumin use the explosion spell to take out her teacher? Because let's be honest, Megumin wouldn't have used anything else. But before we get to the end of Megumin's teacher, we might need to clarify who she actually was. Because Megumin was fought by Puchin back in the Red Prison. And that brings us to the heart of the Megumin prequel. And yes, they are actually canon. The prequel explains how Megumin lived in her village and why she was so fascinated by explosion magic that she wanted to learn only explosion magic. Now, to understand this, we need to know that Megumin is extremely intelligent, just like all of the Crimson Demons. Because all Crimson Demons, by their very definition, are casters, and all casters need intelligence to use their magic and increase its potency. Since the Crimson Demons were created to be extremely powerful casters. Incidentally, by a man with a cheat ability that he received from Aqua, the ability to invent anything he can think of. They are already more clever as children than many demons. Now, this makes them also capable of solving complicated puzzles or accidentally breaking high-level seals. And that exactly is what Megumin did. Both of it. Because of sheer boredom, she accidentally unleashed the dark goddess Volbach by solving her sealing puzzle. And here we need to dig even deeper. Because the monsters seen here and the mysterious woman who saved Megumin from it are actually two halves of the same person, the dark goddess Volbach. And Volbach is the goddess of sloth and wrath, and was split into two parts when she was sealed. Both parts can absorb each other, and Volbach managed to seal her other yet untamed half and escape from the rest of the Crimson Demons. Now the question might arise, why seal a dark deity in the village of the Crimson Demons, where children can play near the shrine and accidentally unseal her? And the answer is quite simple. The Crimson Demons found it pretty neat to have a dark deity sealed in the village. And it was also intended as a tourist attraction, so in short the usual reasons for Crimson Demons. And Volbach used the explosion spell to get rid of her dark half for the moment. Now the question then arises might be, why? Well, Volbach is the goddess of violence and sloth, and engaged in some procrastination herself, but she also had to wait until her other half calmed down, that is the violence half, so that it can be more easily reabsorbed back into her. And now to the meat of the video. Since Megumin freed her, Volbach granted her a wish. After considering grand plots and world domination, Megumin settled for her third choice, the explosion spell, because she was fascinated by the immense power Volbach had unleashed. Now, unlike Megumin, Volbach didn't run out of mana because she used the explosion spell, although most of her mana reserves were still used up. So even Volbach could only use one explosion per day, plus a few teleportation spells, in her divided state. And another goddess, the one of party tricks, has similar, or even more mana than her. After all, Aqua once fired the most mana-consuming Sacred Break spell in Konosuba's history. Oh, and this scene always reminds me of Ashura's attack against Shinigami. I'm sure it's purely coincidental. Now, despite this, there was still enough mana left to fuel the most powerful explosion spell Megumin had ever unleashed to this very day, without Aqua actually collapsing afterwards. On the contrary, she could continue healing and buffing cheerfully and without a worry in the world. So she still had much mana to spare. Just to give you an idea of how much mana an explosion spell requires, without causing someone to collapse. At the very least, you need to be on a deity level, or a half goddess, in the most literal sense. So thanks to Megumin solving a puzzle, the sloth half of Volbach was once again free to roam the world, while Megumin had no idea what she had actually done. And her other half was then released again by another child of the Crimson Demons, Megumin's little sister Komeko, who then found what was left of Volbach's other half after the explosion spell, namely Komeko. This is why the powerful demon Arnis sought out Megumin and was ultimately destroyed by her own explosion magic. And this key event in her childhood left Megumin lifelong fascinated by explosion magic. And fun fact, she almost met her teacher again in Arkan Rezia, the city of hot springs, and that teacher was none other than the woman who was talking to Hans, and the one whom Kazuma, let's call it, scrutinized very, very closely, making it almost seem like she had been caught, while Kazuma was actually just being Kazuma. So just like how Roxy and Rudy almost saw each other again in Windport, but missed another, Megumin almost met her old teacher again, but ultimately both went past each other unnoticed. Volbach, as a goddess, embodied the aspect of sloth and violence. But despite ruling over these two very contrasting and, oftentimes, very evil aspects, she was not inherently evil. When Megumin freed her, Volbach showed a near angelic patience in teaching the little crimson demon girl explosion magic. And Volbach also cared about Megumin's well-being, knowing how much mana explosion magic consumes, and how impractical this spell actually is. Volbach repeatedly tried to persuade Megumin to learn a different and more useful spell instead. However, Megumin was determined to learn explosion magic, and not only did she learn the formula, but she also invented some cool poses and incantations along to go with it, which to Volbach's amazement actually made the explosion spell stronger. As mentioned before, the Crimson Demons are extremely intelligent and have an almost supernatural understanding of magic, so much so that even a supposed dark goddess could learn something from a Crimson Demon child. During her time with Volbach, Megumin also demonstrated that while Volbach preferred to spare beasts, like the one-punch bear, taking care to respect the sanctity of all life, Megumin had no problem killing defenseless opponents. Megumin is quite ruthless in this regard in general, as seen with the Daxian. And now, after several years passed, and Volbach was reunited with the Demon King's army, where she was worshipped by many demons and followers of the Devil King, she sent the demon Host to unseal her other half. However, Host had an enormous problem with the seal, until Megumin's little sister Komeko helped, leading to the unsealing of Volbach's other half, Shomusuke, and a demon invasion in the village of the Crimson Demons. Demons who sought to recover Shomusuke from the village, now that she was freed. But on this very day, thanks to eliminating Daxians, Megumin finally had enough skill points to unlock explosion magic, allowing her to unleash her first explosion ever, which the other Crimson Demons saw as the cause of the disappearance and unsealing of Volbach's other half. And Volbach had indeed calmed down after several years and had taken the form of a black cat, which was then hunted by the regular demons and the higher demoness Arnis, another servant of Volbach. But at first, Arnis was very reasonable and bought the black cat from Megumin for a substantial sum. After already taking the money from Arnis, Megumin tricked the demon, blaming her for the nightly explosions that had disturbed the village peace recently. And thanks to the bracelet Arnis bought from Megumin's father that attracted absolute trash-tier men, Arnis was chased away by the lowest of the low members of the Crimson Demons. However, Arnis did not give up and attacked again in Arcanrezia, only to be chased away by Zesta, the very archpriest of the Axis Order, Aqua's religion, and the many zealots within it. After, of course, Zesta scolded himself for finding a demon interesting. And the way from Arcanrezia to Axel, Arnis also sent monsters after the caravan heading to the city, in order to deplete Union's mana reserves by having her fight minor enemies all the time, only to be then destroyed by Megumin using the spell her very own master Volbach had taught her. And with that said, we are now going to skip a lot of content from the prequel straight to Volume 9, where the capital city of the Kingdom of Berserk was once again in serious danger, a fortress normally impregnable and guarded by other Japanese sheet item holders, with a considerable garrison of knights, now stood at the brink of absolute collapse, thanks to the ceaseless assault of a demon general. So Megumin and company set off, dragging Kazuma as usual towards the danger in order to defend the capital. After taking a break at a hot spring nearby, where all three women fled to the women's bath, while Kazuma went naturally to the mixed bath, Kazuma coincidentally met Volbach for a second time, without realizing it, and she vaguely mentioned that she was searching for another part of herself, a powerful entity. Meanwhile, Kazuma, attentive as ever, talked about Shumusuke openly, the black cat Megumin refers to as a dark goddess. Fortunately, neither Kazuma nor Volbach realized that Kazuma was talking about Volbach's other half, and Megumin and Volbach missed another again. And after another day, Kazuma and company arrived at the fortress, and the morale was abysmal there, despite the combined military might of seasoned, battle-hardened warriors and the sheet item holders. They were unable to withstand the general's attack. Far from the fortress, a camp with enormous numbers of demons did not attack, but was ready and on standby. A powerful threat all of its very own. But instead of wasting precious lives, the demon general teleported herself in front of the fortress daily and attacked the walls with an explosion spell, which were now on the very verge of collapse. They would need divine help to rebuild the fortress defenses within 24 hours, so the general was bit by bit chipping away at the kingdom's position, demoralizing the considerable garrison in the process. And Kazuma brought just that, as Aqua, despite her behavior, is still a goddess in the flesh, a being dedicated to the creation and life itself, from which she herself emerged from. Aqua can be very constructive when she wants to be. And as seen at the very beginning of Konosuba, she has great knowledge of building and of painting. And thanks to Aqua's help, the garrison managed the sheer impossible, not only to repair the walls, but also to prepare for a counterattack. While Aqua, with her other great strength, art in the form of gravity, occupied herself with it because she quickly got bored after repairing the walls in no time. Kazuma thought of a plan to turn the tables. Initially, Kazuma, Megumin and Aqua planned to intercept the attacker to address the root of the problem, the hit-and-run explosion tactics. However, while she spotted the demon general, Megumin couldn't bring herself to unleash an explosion upon her, giving Aqua time to be annoying and to confront Volbach. For Aqua, Volbach was an evil goddess because she joined the Demon King's army. Something Volbach didn't like hearing, because, as it turned out, she was considered only an evil goddess because Aqua's religious sect, the Holy Order of Axis, had branded her as a dark goddess. Despite herself being more morally upstanding and responsible than Aqua and her teachings ever could be. But before Aqua could summon yet another holy flawed catastrophe like she did back in Axel, Volbach teleported away. So another plan was conceived by Kazuma. Thanks to Kazuma's scouting skills and Union's help, Kazuma, Union, and Megumin could sneak into the enemy encampment and set off an explosion before Union teleported them back to the fortress. Volbach also noticed this change of strategy quite quickly. Initially, she wanted to destroy the walls of the fortress in order to break the garrison's morale. This was a very clever tactic. Either the defenders of the fortress of the Kingdom of Berserk would desperately try to reach the capital in time, while being pursued by Volbach's rested and highly motivated demon army, which would likely spell their end. Or they would surrender without a fight, which was the most likely outcome. It was a very smart, considerate, and life-saving tactic by Volbach, whereas Megumin's tactics to just nuke the enemy encampment could be considerately described as having a certain massacre mentality. But with this change in strategy, Volbach now confronted Megumin, Union and Kazuma in front of the fortress gates, where she finally spotted her other half and tried to make Kazuma understand that she desperately needed Shomusuke back. Without her other half, Volbach would grow weaker and weaker, and because she had been separated from her other half way longer than initially planned, she also needed a lot of hot baths in order to recover. Kazuma, of course, did not simply hand over Shomusuke, something which made him appear as a complete jerk in the eyes of the entire fortress. Volbach then returned and abandoned her more defensive stance and ordered her demon army to launch a frontal attack. But of course, the demons were repelled by the strong walls and the numerous knights and shield item holders suffering enormous losses in the process. But Volbach was clever, and this was not her main plan, because she investigated who this Kazuma really was. That was the mastermind behind the recent attempt on her life, and she found out that he had taken down her colleague Hans and many other demon generals. Thus she suspected that Kazuma was the descendant of the legendary hero Kazuma Satoru, who had saved the Kingdom of Berserk centuries ago. Recognizing her true opponent and seeing a weakness in the strategy of this Kazuma, Volbach targeted him and his group, while Aqua stayed at the fortress, as she was both a defense and anti-demon expert. Volbach then intercepted Megumin, Union, and Kazuma when they tried to blow up the same camp yet again. But before Volbach could unleash her own explosion spell, a spell requiring a lengthy formula, Kazuma used the time to pull out something out of his pocket, a small stick of dynamite, which, fun fact, he had to make tiny in the first place in order to hide it from Megumin, to avoid making her jealous, since she considers anything that could explode as a pathetic attempt to replace her and her precious explosion magic. And Kazuma threw this dynamite stick, called Tinymite, at Volbach, before Union teleported them back. And Volbach was now wounded, which had dire consequences. Now one might assume that a half-goddess, a being of enormous, godlike power and status, far above that of mortals, could withstand even such a direct hit. And indeed she did survive. However, she would not fully recover from this wound, since Shumusuke, her other half, was still around and close by. And therefore Volbach was weakened by the hit, enabling Shumusuke to absorb Volbach's very life energy and mana. Consequently, Volbach attacked Kazuma and his group directly, abandoning any idea of saving lives or showing mercy. And this led to a duel between Megumin and Volbach to see who could cast the explosion spell faster, with the winner sweeping away the other side. If Volbach would be indeed faster, she would eliminate Shumusuke, absorb the life essence of her other half back into herself, heal, and become strong enough to completely destroy the fortress. If Megumin was faster, Volbach would lose and be absorbed by Shumusuke instead. It was all or nothing, and so Volbach began reciting the explosion spell incantations, focusing her remaining mana into a mighty explosion. Megumin also started talking, but about how explosion magic had influenced her and how grateful she was for Volbach's help. Volbach was about 1/3 through with her incantations by that point, but Megumin continued talking and found it strange that Volbach recognized Union, but still denied ever knowing herself. While Volbach was about 2/3 done, Kazuma now realized how bad the situation was, but couldn't come up with any way to solve it. And while Volbach had almost finished reciting the final lines, Megumin concluded with the words that she had now perfected explosion magic thanks to Volbach, with a heartfelt thank you and the remark that she now could even use the explosion spell without speaking a single word. And so, Volbach was obliterated, and her essence absorbed by Megumin's cat, Shumusuke. In other words, although Shumusuke was weakened by Volbach's initial explosion and years of being sealed, it was now stronger than when she was briefly released at the first time. Shumusuke even grew a bit, which is something Kazuma noticed. And that's the story of how Megumin eliminated her former mentor. And with that said, now it's your turn. What do you think about how Megumin had ended Volbach? Let me know it down in the comment section. And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching and special thanks to Ada Dediade, ASK, Bad Guy Yi, Bad Burrito 316, Bisa, Ben C, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Dinpep, Dragonlord Placido Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feralchivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Moreno, Hoss, Hustar, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Loverazor, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, Oakhill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantom, Personage, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Cune Caracos P, Shangox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Sir Axolotl, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rak Ed Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Zenukai, and Sonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.